Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate ringsidenews.com. Got a lot of questions here from spring.me/Aaron Rift. That is the place to submit questions for NoDQ&A video. So let's get started here today with the first one from Brad Scott 37. What are your thoughts on Daniel Bryan possibly never wrestling again? Well, I think that anything is possible. You never quite know when it comes to these types of injuries. Anything's possible, but if I had to make a prediction, if I had to go to Las Vegas and put money down, I would say that Daniel Bryan will wrestle again at some point. It's just a matter of when. I think that it would really take a lot for him to never set foot in a wrestling ring again. I would not rush it. I would bring Daniel Bryan back when he is ready to go, and there might be complications, but I think we will see him again. And it's also possible that WWE is downplaying the recovery as a way to throw people off and perhaps swerve people into thinking he won't be back, and then he comes back at the Royal Rumble as a huge surprise, similar to what happened with John Cena back in 2008. So that's certainly a possibility as well. We just don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Daniel Bryan when he comes back. But I think that the odds are we will see him again in a WWE ring in 2015. All right, this one comes from Dave451985. When Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan both return to action, WWE is going to need an abundance of faces and not so many good heels. Who would be your top 3 picks to turn heel if you could choose? Well, I think the obvious number 1 choice would be Dean Ambrose. If WWE needs a solid heel on top, they already have Seth Rollins and they got Brock Lesnar as a part-timer. Dean Ambrose makes the most sense to me because he is a guy that can do either role. He can be a great heel, he can be a great babyface, he can do whatever WWE needs him to do. So I could see Dean Ambrose at some point turning heel, especially if Roman Reigns comes back and gets a huge push as a main eventer, and you could even have Roman Reigns versus Dean Ambrose for the WWE title with Dean Ambrose as a heel, and you could also do a 3-way feud between Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose as a tweener, and Seth Rollins as the full-fledged heel. Other people on the roster, somebody like Dolph Ziggler, you could have turn heel again. The fans love him as a babyface. He does a tremendous job, but you can always have him go back to being a heel, and then the heel Ziggler handle can actually make sense again. And there's a lot of other guys that you could have turn heel again. Guys like Big E, it looked like for a while that he was going to be going heel with Xavier Woods and R-Truth, Kofi Kingston with that whole new faction. But at this point, who knows what's going to happen with that. But you could have Big E turn heel again and become a monster heel and be that type of heel where he goes on a dominant rampage. I would avoid turning guys like Mark Henry and Big Show again just because it's been done to death. So if you're going to turn somebody heel who hasn't been a heel for a long period of time, if at all. All right, this one comes from Gravy Sticks. WWE portrays John Cena as being an all-time great, which a lot of kids buy into, but a lot more of core fans see him in this role simply as a PR move. When everything is said and done, will fans see him as overrated and overpushed, or will they look at him as a great? Well, you have to keep in mind that back in the 1980s when Hulk Hogan was at his prime, you had a lot of hardcore, old-school wrestling fans that hated Hulk Hogan. They grew up on traditional wrestling, and they did not like the cartoonish aspect to the Hulk Hogan character and what he was doing to the business. And they thought he was a terrible wrestler with very few moves. Same thing as John Cena today. But now, you look at the fans that are my age in their early 30s, we all love Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan can come out there and we will all cheer for him. He can just stand there in the ring and everybody will go nuts. All the grown men will be in their Hulk Hogan gear and they will be going crazy for the guy. My gut feeling is that in 15, 20 years, the kids of today are going to grow up and they're going to look back on John Cena as when wrestling was in its good old days, when wrestling was at its peak, the time when John Cena came out and never gave up and was this tremendous baby face who overcame the odds. And the fans that are kids today, when they're adults 20 years from now, they're going to look at John Cena, you know, in terms of the nostalgia, and they're going to see him as one of the all-time greats. All right, this one comes from Wrestling Do 95. Joran, what did you think of the Triple Threat Tag Team Series for the TNA Tag Titles, and do you feel the Wolves are over as a solid team? Well, regarding the series, I thought it was tremendous. I thought that those matches were all excellent, especially the final match. And I really give credit where credit is due to those guys, considering the fact that TNA's future is very much in doubt. All those guys went out there and tried to steal the show every match they had and give it their best performances. And they brought their A games. They went all out for those matches. And hats off to all of them. And as far as how over the Wolves are, I'm not so sure there's any such thing as being over in TNA right now. You know, being over would mean selling merchandise and drawing people to the arenas and drawing TV ratings and all that stuff. And the reality is right now nobody's really over if you look at it from strictly a business standpoint. Now, perhaps if TNA gets a new TV deal and things start getting going again in 2015, you know, I will say one thing about the Wolves. If anything, they've brought credibility to the tag team titles. Coming off of this series, the tag team titles mean something in TNA. Whether that has any effect on future business, that remains to be seen. But the titles were fought in hard-fought matches, or hard fart matches, as one person would say. But yeah, they really made the titles mean something. So if anything, I think the series helped make the titles more meaningful. All right, this one comes from Ricky Lawson 9. Hey Aaron, do you think the Steiner Brothers will ever be in the WWE Hall of Fame? I think they're very underrated, plus I want to hear Scott Steiner's speech. Please answer in video. Absolutely about the Scott Steiner speech. I would pay $9.99 a month just to hear Scott Steiner talk and cut a Hall of Fame promo speech. That would be amazing. And as far as the Steiner Brothers going into the WWE Hall of Fame, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's an obvious choice. The Steiner Brothers, one of the greatest tag teams of all time in wrestling. They have held the tag team titles every promotion that they've worked for. They've been major stars. Even in WWE, they were tag team champions. Those guys, no doubt, should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think it will happen. It's just a matter of time. This one comes from Hooked on Phonics M. Hey Aaron, wow. I just watched the Razor Ramon beating Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10. Why can't we have matches like this anymore? That was one of the best matches I've ever seen. I'm sure you have reviewed it 100 times, but what were your thoughts? Well, the reason we can't see matches like that anymore is because there's only one Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was one of a kind as far as athleticism goes and being able to tell a story in the ring. Everything he did was to perfection. He was really the very best at his craft. So that's the number one problem, is we don't have another Shawn Michaels, and there never will be another Shawn Michaels. And also, the thing about that match is that it was unique at the time, and it was a trendsetter. It was a trendsetter. It was a match that redefined high spot matches, and it set the bar to a new level. It raised the bar higher than it had ever been in terms of athletic competition and what you could do in the ring and the spectacular things that you could do in a match. Both of them, not just Shawn Michaels, but Razor Ramon as well, they set the bar really high with that match. And that's why people look back on that as one of the all-time greats, because they were pioneers in a way, doing a match like that on pay-per-view. And, you know, that was the first ladder match of that magnitude on a big stage. And, you know, that's why people tend to remember it and think so highly of it. And it was just an excellent match. I mean, it was Shawn Michaels at his peak and Scott Hall when he was at his peak as well. All right, this one comes from Clarky Boy123. Do you see Eric Rowan doing anything significant as a solo competitor? I think that he has a chance, but it's going to depend on how WWE utilizes him and books him and how the character development goes. Right now, they're focusing on Harper, but you look back when Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes split up, I thought for sure that Ted DiBiase was going to be the star of the team. And as it turned out, it was Cody Rhodes, and Ted DiBiase didn't really go anywhere. So it could be a repeat of that where people are not expecting Eric Rowan to go anywhere, but he could very well surpass Luke Harper and become a bigger star. It's just a matter of how things go and how well things go with Luke Harper. I mean, WWE appears to be focusing on Harper right now, but anything's possible. You just don't know what's going to happen for sure. All right, this one comes from Todrick923. Hey Aaron, I know this may be hard for you to answer, but what do you think was the worst moment in WCW history? I would say either the finger poke of doom or David Arquette winning the WCW title. Please answer in video, thanks. Well, a lot of people looked very negatively towards the finger poke of doom, and it was a moment that people symbolize as the beginning of WCW's downfall, but the reality is that business still stayed strong in WCW after that. It took a couple of months of just one bad decision after another before WCW really started to sink. So as bad as the finger poke of doom was, it was a combination of a lot of things that led to WCW's demise. But when you compare the finger poke of doom with David Arquette winning the title, I think you have to go with David Arquette because a few weeks prior to that, when he won the title, you had Russo and Bischoff coming back to WCW, and people were willing to give WCW one more chance. They wanted to give WCW another chance. But then when David Arquette won the title, that essentially killed whatever credibility the world title had left. I mean, it was done by that point because the WCW title, the world title in any promotion, is supposed to be held by the guy who is the best, a guy that nobody can beat. So when an actor, and not just an outsider, but a guy who is not a wrestler, wins a title, it completely ruins the credibility of the title. There's no way to suspend disbelief. It's all over with. So I would have to go with David Arquette. All right, final question here. Jorn, what are your thoughts on TNA getting a new TV deal and the speculation of a new talent bringing some buzz to the company? Well, as far as getting a new TV deal goes, I'd love to see it happen, but it's one of those cases where I will have to believe it. I will have to see it to believe it. Once that happens, if it happens, they get a new TV deal, that will keep them in business. I've said it time and time again. For them to really function as a company at the level that they've been for the past several years, they need the TV deal. That is critical to their long-term survival. So hopefully they get that. As far as a new talent, that's not as important as fixing the brand. The problem with TNA is the brand is severely damaged, and I don't know if there's anything you can do to recover from that. That's what they need to focus on. They need to focus on rebranding, rebuilding the company, giving it a new identity. Signing new talent is secondary, in my opinion. I think that you don't need to bring in more former WWE guys. It doesn't really matter who you bring in. It's the TNA brand that needs work. So that's my opinion on that. That'll wrap it up for this edition of No DQ&A video. Subscribe, youtube.com/NoDQCAW. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest in WWE and TNA, and I will see you guys next time for more.